What's going on, fellow gamers? We have Lorcana set for store championships starting this week and running all throughout July. I know it's been a while since we posted a video here on the channel. We've been a little bit busy expecting our first child in just over a month. Hopefully we can hold out in time to play at our local game store. And with Pixelborn shut down now officially, it's been a little bit harder to come up with content since we need the physical cards. But my wife and I have been playing non-stop throughout the little break we took, and I'm very excited to show off one of the spicy decks we're going to be taking to our store championships. Let's take a look. I just want to start by saying that my meta at my local game store is very Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire heavy. I have built the deck to deal with that, but there are some modifications that I would make if I start seeing more Emerald Steel pop up in my area, but as of right now, it's pretty much exclusively Ruby Amethyst, Ruby Sapphire, Sapphire Steel, and one or two Steel songs, and then we get like a Ruby Amber player as well. Alright, so to start off, just like every good Sapphire Steel deck, we're going to be running 4 Popsicles and 4 Fortispheres. It's going to enable our card draw throughout the game, and as you'll see in just a little bit, we have more ways in the deck to draw cards using these 1-drops very efficiently. Next up, we are running 4 copies of Mr. Spee. Again, very standard for Sapphire Steel, so nothing too surprising here. Smee is just a great early quester. He puts a lot of pressure on the board for a lot of decks that want to get out those big threats early, like your Amethyst. Most likely, you'll end up trading this card anyway, so you'll get to maybe 4 lore with this, and then it can take out a Fox or a Snake and prevent some future plays that your opponent has. And then speaking of very standard Sapphire Steel, we have 4 Hiram cards. Hiram is just a excellent card to continually draw from your items, so nothing too spicy yet. We do have 1 hollow here, and I don't know if you can see that, but it's got bad print lines. It's just the way the card came out of the pack, funny enough, but we play it anyway. And next up, where we really start to deviate from the standard Sapphire Steel, I actually run 4 copies of the 2-drop Aurora with Ward. She can survive things with 2 attack, and she'll be untargetable to early game ping damage from like a Fire the Cannons or Baboom, which is super important because on turn 3, we are trying to play Aurora Dreaming Guardian. This card is essential in our deck to protect our Hirams from the control of Ruby, which is, like I said, very prevalent in the meta that I play in. And if you're not familiar with how Aurora works, when you put her on the field, every other character on your side of the field will gain ward. She herself does not have ward, but she has enough strength that the early game removal can't really touch her, and her biggest threat, really, unless she is exerted, is going to be like along came Zeus, which can take out the 5 HP in one go. I love this card. Being able to play it turn 3 allows you to safely bring in your Hiram. They won't be able to target the Hiram as long as Aurora is on the field. And like I said, with the 5 toughness, Aurora is going to be able to survive any single spell, and as long as you don't quest her, she'll be able to survive. She'll survive Baboom, she'll survive Fire the Cannons, she'll even be able to hold out through a Ursula Deceiver of All, singing a Let the Storm Rage On. And then we can even use our Popsicles to keep her on the field and keep that really powerful ability so that our Hiram can't be targeted, and we're going to have ways further into the deck that are going to further prevent Hiram from leaving the field. So because we're going to have this Aurora on turn 3 in most games, I've loaded the deck up with a lot of 5-cost songs, 5-cost or less songs that we're going to be able to sing. Most likely I will be running 3 Grab Your Swords. I tried playing around with just 2, and I wouldn't find it enough to really make good use out of it early. We'll run a Let It Go for the late game, 2 copies of Let the Storm Rage On, because like I said, our Aurora will be able to sing it, as well as our bodyguards that we'll show off later in the deck. And I do have 3 copies of Smash here. These are temporary right now. I am just waiting on my Along Came Zeus cards to come in the mail, but these 3 slots will be Along Came Zeus. So we'll change that now with some editing magic. All right, and our next line of cards is going to be all about keeping our Hiram on the board and safe while it quests and gets us more cards. We've got the Cogsworth that's going to give him resist 1. And we also are using a bodyguard in Chien Po. I've flipped a coin here on doing 2 or 3 of Chien Po. Although it is devastating if we lose our Hiram, the last half of the deck has some surprise ways to still draw cards. so I don't think it's that big of a deal if he's not able to stay on the field for too long. Hopefully with a turn 3 Aurora, turn 4 Hiram, and then turn 5 Chien Po, you'll be able to keep him on the field for a couple turns and it'll get really good use out of him. The only danger with running just 2 is that we might not find it. We might have to play Cogsworth instead, or we might have to play some kind of removal and pay for it with our ink. And then for our 6 drop, we are going back to pretty standard Sapphire Steel. In this meta, we're running 3 copies of the Tinkerbell card. This is great to get a single damage out. Could be something to get all over the line to remove something like a Diablo. You can combo this with getting rid of Bucky really easily. And she has a really great ability of when she attacks and takes something out, she can deal 2 damage to something else, which really helps with hitting the evasive cards. And then for our late game quester and insanely fast lore gain, we're playing the new Ariel card. She herself has ward, so not a big deal if Aurora's on the field or not. She's still going to have ward. And we have plenty of items in the deck. The only thing that this deck might run into is if it's playing a mirror match or if it's playing a Ruby Sapphire deck, you might be into an items race where this card is not as effective as it could be. That's a risk we take to get the ward on this character. We could run Bell instead, but in my playtests, I really like how Ariel plays out. And then if you're playing against Ruby Amethyst, Sapphire Steel, you're always going to have the item advantage, so you're always going to get the max benefit out of this. And then wrapping up the last of our high cost cards, we're going to be running 2 Lucky Dime. This is usually more than enough to see at least 1 throughout the game with how many cards that we usually draw. And then we play 3 Tamatoa, just because in my experience, drawing 1 early can be make or break because you have to end up using it for ink. When you have 3 of them, you've got at least 1 to spare. It's not the end of the world getting rid of it early. And late game, if you lose another one due to a Be Prepared or some other removal like a Maleficent Dragon, you still have another one in your deck somewhere hiding. So this is another late change that I made, adding another Tamatoa to the deck. But as long as I don't find it super early, I'll usually pull it mid-game, which is where you want to see them. And next up, we have our specialized removal part of the deck. For our 1-drop, I personally play Fire the Cannons because, like I said, I'm going up mostly against Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst. Usually there's no issue with ward as of right now from what I've seen, so I'm able to deal damage directly to characters. I don't need to worry about someone evading my damage with a ward spell. If I was playing in a really populated Emerald Steel meta, I would trade these out for Triton's Decree. I think this card is a sleeper hit. You don't get to choose what character gets the 2 damage, which is a gift and a curse when you're playing this game. You'll want to play this when it's just Bucky on the field, because your opponent has to choose Bucky and it has to get rid of it. Works the same way for us as Be King Undisputed works, and has been working same way as Lady Tremaine works against this deck. I think this is a very fun surprise card that a lot of Emerald players are not really expecting, and it catches them off guard. Because we do need to be prepared for Emerald evasives and Ruby evasives, I do have Magic Room in here, just something to get on the board as a little bit of presence to kind of persuade them not to play those cards and quest with them so recklessly, because even if we're just doing 2 damage to something, we have enough spot removal that we can pick off the last damages here or there and be just fine. And then last up, I do run 2 Rise of the Titans to banish locations or items. Typically I'll banish the Queen's Castle against Amethyst players, and then against Ruby Sapphire, we're going for the Fishbone Quills, the Lucky Dimes. And then against your players, if they're not running Hidden Cove, this usually will just turn into ink for us. So it's not the best use of a card slot in that matchup, which is why, like I said, we're not playing mostly against those cards, so I kept that in here. But if I was playing against more Emerald players and still needed the item removal, I'd probably switch it out for the 3 cost or the 5 cost Beast Hard-Headed. Benjul will allow us to get rid of an item, but also will allow us to sing Let the Storm Rage On, because he is that 3 cost. And now on to the final part of the deck. If you've been following along, you probably are thinking, where is the Sapphire ramp? I don't see any Fishbone Quills, and that's because we do not run Fishbone Quill in this deck. In my experience testing this deck so far, Fishbone Quill gets me into more trouble with getting cards out of my hand that I could use later. And I think the Endless ramp of Greatstone Dragon is something that's very overlooked. There's many games that I've played where I get my Greatstone Dragon out maybe on turn 5, turn 6, once things have started to be removed, especially since we're using shift for Aurora. If that Aurora gets removed, I can start pulling an extra ink every single turn and still having the cards in my hand. Now the downside is you can't use this item on the turn that it comes in, and you can't use the ink on the turn that you use the item. But with that being said, once you get to turn 7, turn 8, turn 9, and you've been using this every single turn, I end up having 15, 16 ink, which is more than enough to cycle through my entire deck, especially since we are going to be using extra ink with our last 2 cards, Maurice's Workshop. If you're not familiar with this card, whenever you play an item, you can pay an extra ink at any time after to draw an additional card. So what that means is our popsicles and our Fortispheres, instead of being a pay 1 and get 1 card, it's pay 1, get 1 card. If I don't like that and I have extra ink, I can pay another one and get another card. When you get to the end of the game and you really need to find your lucky dimes, you need to find a removal spell, and you have a Tamatoa on the board who's bringing these popsicles back, you are able to continually draw. Now, in an ideal world, at the end of the game, if we get to this board state, we're going to draw 1 for turn. Hiram's going to quest to remove a popsicle. We'll draw 2, so now we're at 3 for the turn. Tamatoa will quest, and we'll bring the popsicle back to our hand, paying 1 to get an additional card. Now we're at 4 cards, and we'll use another ink with Maurice's Workshop to draw a 5th card for the turn, which means for this turn, we've drawn 5 cards for 2 ink. And if we've ramped properly with Greatstone Dragon, we still have 15, 14, 12, whatever it is, ink left to make the rest of our moves. And with the amount of removal and control that's in this deck, it's something that's super strong, super overlooked, and I can't recommend this card more for just late game hyper card draw, and Greatstone Dragon for just late game infinite ink. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Like I said, I've gone through a lot of testing with this deck. This is my current favorite to bring to set champs. I'll post a video after our set champs. It is at the end of July, and I'll let you know how we did. I don't see a lot of people talking about these 2 cards in particular, Maurice's Workshop and Greatstone Dragon, and I know for a fact I've seen 0 content around Aurora, so this is something that could really surprise your other players at your local store. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe. I do have one more deck that I'm currently testing. It is using everyone's favorite squirrel, Bucky, so please don't hate me in the comments. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya!